You're listening live to Gamecock Central Radio, broadcasting from the Back Porch, Gervais Street, downtown Columbia. Tonight's show is our first ever show with Chris Clark, recruiting guru, Ron Aiken, beat writer, and me, CJ Driggers. So what's up, Chris?
Hey guys, glad to be here at Back Porch.
Ron, you awake down there?
I am awake. I'm prepared and ready. I'm just reading over some interesting statistical material. It's fun to be here for the first kickoff, the first installment of Gamecock Central Radio. Kind of been a long time coming, but I think it's a overdue and welcome addition to the Gamecock Central family. That's for sure.
Well, we think we've talked about the UNC game enough the last couple days, but let's go through a quick recap as far as what your impressions of the game were.
Yeah, I mean, just going through some standouts from the game. You know, I think if you're a South Carolina fan or someone who follows the program, you got to be really impressed with what we saw from Mike Davis, Brandon Wilds. Those two guys had a really good game. Of course, Mike Davis had the 75-yard touchdown run. South Carolina's offensive line, you know, North Carolina's defense not going to be really a very strong defense, not going to be one of the better units that South Carolina faces this year. But I thought the offensive line did a pretty good job, run blocking, pretty good job pass blocking also. Even Steve Spurrier came back later and said, it wasn't as bad as we initially thought. And certainly Davis had some big runs, but Brandon Wilds, I think, was really overshadowed. He had a really, really big game as well.
I couldn't agree more with that assessment, especially of Mike Davis and Brandon Wilds. All preseason, the expectations were high for those two, kind of battling back and forth. Who's going to replace Marcus Lattimore? He brought so much to the table in terms of experience and yardage, especially short yardage. So who's going to be able to do that? And between those two backs, they both got 12 carries. Both had excellent yards per carry average. I think 5 for Wilds and maybe 9 for Mike Davis. We spoke with Everett Sands tonight after practice, and he was pleased with both of them. He said yards per carry is a big focus point for them as running backs. One of the things he talked about that I thought was neat was that after they do drills in practice, when the whistle stops, he makes his running back sprint an extra 15 yards. That's just something he's decided to do, and he's got them doing, and it gives them that mental edge to never stop playing. He said the whistle isn't for you when he's talking to the running backs. The whistle's for somebody else, so you need to keep running as long as you can. And I think we saw that pay off in terms of a breakaway run from Davis with his 75-yard touchdown run. That's the kind of run I can't remember seeing in quite some time. Just an inside handoff that breaks to the outside and just he bursts past everybody. So between Davis's explosiveness and Wild's pretty much uncanny ability to just go forward for 2 or 3 or 4 yards and get those tough yardage inside, I think they have a complete running back all together. It's kind of interesting when you look at Shaw, Davis, and Wilds all had 12 carries, and together they get to 200-plus yards. And so I think that's the biggest positive coming out of the North Carolina game was how well they were able to run the ball. They didn't have to do much on the passing front. They were able to run, hit a couple of big passes, and then really just sit on top of North Carolina after that.
Yeah, I think another thing, too, was the defensive performance. I mean, this is a North Carolina team, like I said earlier, they don't project to be a really strong defensive team, but certainly offensively, this is a group that even though they're replacing some parts and pieces on that O-line, it's a strong offensive group. They got a veteran quarterback who knows that offense and can run it well. They've got some really capable receivers like Quinshaw Davis. He did have a touchdown, but South Carolina was able to limit him. They got one of the best tight ends in the country in Eric Ebron. They got some very capable running backs between, Romar Morris, A.J. Blue. They got some guys that can play on offense, and that's a tough offense to defend with the tempo and things like that, and to limit them to 10 points. And their only touchdown came on a drive in which they converted a 3rd and long because of a big penalty that was sort of bogus, really, on Chaz Sutton. I mean, that's a pretty strong performance, I thought, defensively.
That's a heck of a performance. I would not have guessed 10 points only. What did you think? You had a different view from us, CJ, on the sidelines. How did the game look to you down there from a photographer's perspective?
It looked hot. It was hot. I tell you what, I'm born and raised in Aiken and lived in the state my whole life, and I've shot pretty much every game for the last 10 years. And that's one of the top 3 hottest, most humid environments ever. 6 o'clock, August. It was sweltering out there. So all the criticism about the players, fatiguing. I mean, everybody was.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing I heard Spurrier, I think, mention was the fact that for those of us who have been here going to practices every night, it has not been that hot. During this whole preseason camp in August, it just hasn't been that hot. It was a super hot, out of character night that they haven't acclimated themselves to. Nobody had in Columbia, really.
No, it was muggy, and I think it was the hottest evening in the whole summer.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
Monday and Tuesday, what was it, 75, 78?
That's cool.
I mean, everybody was, I know I was a little giddy about being out there at that time, and then, of course, game day showed up, and you had 80,000 people, concrete, excitement. It was sweltering down there. The players were definitely gassed early on. Both teams, I thought, did a lot of substitutions. Kind of hurt the rhythm a little bit of the game. First game jitters, a little awkward for everybody. But overall, you got to play the game. And it was definitely cooler after the intermission. That was a little better environment to work in.
That was like watching a football practice. I mean, it's almost like both teams are kind of ready to go home at that point. It wasn't very exciting. Some driving back and forth, and then let's just get everybody home. At least everybody that was left at the stadium. There wasn't too many people that hung around for that.
What did you guys think about ESPN really making a huge deal? I mean, they made it clear from the outset on the broadcast that they were going to have a camera just on Clowney, focusing on him. We all knew that going into the season, everything that he did was going to be, hyper scrutinized and just ridiculously. And if he didn't have 10 sacks against North Carolina, everybody would wonder if he was living up to the hype. Those who actually watched the game know that North Carolina ran basically every play away from him. If you actually look at the plays that he played, he gave max effort on the plays that came near him. He was chasing down bubble screens all the way across the field and stuff like that. I mean, for ESPN to start running graphics saying, Clowney struggles and this and that, I thought he had a big effect on the game.
He had a huge effect on the game. I mean, they had to game plan everything around him. They had to account for him in their preparation, and they accounted for him with their execution. Like you said, screen passes away from him, everything directed away from him, double teams. Those things had a huge impact on the game outside of his just 3 tackles. And I thought, personally, it was probably unfair, but then again, barring some kind of a 7-sack, 12-tackle performance, it was a recipe to be set up to fail because they expected so much. It had so many media there, so many eyes on that game as the opener. Everybody's watched that hit. Everybody wanted to see that hit. And when they see a 3-tackle performance that kind of has some mitigating factors, it wasn't what anybody wanted to see. Everybody wanted to get a look at just a monster that could not be stopped. And what they saw was a guy who still played with great effort and had a shifty quarterback that got away from him a couple times. Otherwise, he could have easily had 2 or 3 sacks and still impacted the game in a forceful way. So it was probably unfair, I think, a lot of those the immediate criticisms. But sometimes that's what happens when you're in that sort of knee-jerk moment, immediate analysis kind of a thing. But probably unfair, I would say.
Well, one thing we want to do, and you guys are definitely pros, man. I have to say, you're used to being behind the mic, and this is a little new to me, but I will say this. We definitely want questions from the audience, and if you could email them to GCRlive@GamecockCentral.com, we will do our best to answer them, specifically Ron and Chris. If you can send those in, we'll be checking that constantly, and you can submit to the Twitter feed, and we'll be checking that constantly as well. Gamecock Central at Twitter.
Let's move on. Talking about Clowney again. Ron, the differences between North Carolina's scheme and Georgia's scheme, pretty vast differences. How motivated do you think Clowney's going to be coming out for this Georgia game after all this scrutiny he's gotten? I mean, it's impossible to ignore.
I think he has to be, right? I mean, he's got to know the focus on him. Like you said, ESPN had a camera on him for every play. The state newspaper had a camera on him for every play. I mean, every play is under a microscope. I've seen the mashup on YouTube of all of his plays back to back in that game, and you get a different perspective when you look at it like that of the effort that he gave. Like I said, he gave max effort plenty of times, and doggone it, it was hot. I mean, anybody that's tried to get out there and pull weeds in that kind of environment, it's tough. And so no matter what kind of condition you're in, you're going to get gassed. And one thing that was that affected South Carolina positively was their depth, and that depth is going to be an absolute plus going into this Georgia game, because from a weather standpoint, it's scheduled to be hot. Afternoon game in Athens. They got to play a night game, so they haven't been through that just sweltering kind of a circumstance. So that's actually going to kind of favor, I would say, South Carolina a little bit. And I believe just from a Clowney's perspective purely, he feasts on Aaron Murray, and the way that offensive line for Georgia looked against Clemson, couldn't slow them down. I think you have to feel like that's going to be the case again. There's no reason to think it's not.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of those specific matchups, too. I definitely want to talk about that. But question that just came in here to GCR Live at GamecockCentral.com. And Ron, you were just out at the practice fields.
Mm-hmm.
What do you believe the percentage of starting center Cody Waldrop playing this week?
My gut feeling is 0%. They say he's day-to-day. They say they'll kind of wait and see, mostly because they would love to have him back out there. But for the second day in a row, he didn't practice. He was in a yellow jersey. He was in a walking boot and on crutches. And when you're on crutches on Wednesday, that doesn't give me a lot of confidence that you're going to be running full speed against Georgia on Saturday. So I think they're doing everything they can to get Clayton Stadnick ready. We talked to Sean Elliott after the game, and that's kind of what he said. They feel like they have confidence in him, and that's another thing that Sean Elliott says a lot is we tell these guys we have confidence in them, because what else are we supposed to say? And I do think there's probably a scenario. He ran off the field before we could ask him, but I do think there's a scenario where if there's a problem that comes up, missed snaps, blocking, I think they have a backup scenario to maybe plug a A.J. Cannon at center and slide some guys around to stop any bleeding should that happen. Now, of course, they would love to see Clayton Stadnick go out there and be terrific. But I doubt, just watching him hobble around on crutches doesn't give me a lot of confidence that he'll play Saturday.
Yeah, and it's always tough to tell how it'll go because, this weekend, and of course Cody will have the benefit of the 2 extra days and whatnot. He may be even more questionable than he is now if South Carolina hadn't played on Thursday, and it seemed like maybe during the weekend folks thought, maybe he would have a better chance to play. But, yeah, like Spurrier said, questionable, maybe even doubtful today. And certainly they've got to operate under the premise that maybe they're not going to have him and try to get Clayton ready. And, Clayton was a guy who was pretty far behind Cody, in the preseason. Sean Elliott and Steve Spurrier, I both really tried to sort of motivate him. Remember true freshman Alan Knott actually grabbed the backup center job for a while before Clayton regained it. So, I feel like if there's a chance that Cody can play and be somewhat effective, if it's maybe not 100%, there's a good chance that he will play if he can. But like you said, still in crutches today, still in yellow, not even out there walking around. So it's hard to tell at this point.
Yeah, I'd say it's fair to say it's a drop off just right now based on, otherwise he'd have been pushing him harder to be the starter, and that's something that Elliott said during preseason camp, that he was miles ahead of him. There was no contest for center. It was Cody Waldrop. So hopefully they'll get that taken care of, and it's a chance for Clayton Stadnick to come out there and plug and play, get in there and win.
Ron, what do you think about Ellington's and Buster Anderson being available? Do you think they're 100% for real?
I think they are, because they didn't get used that much. I would have loved to have seen Ellington stay on the sidelines for North Carolina, but he wanted to play, and they wanted to give him a little bit of a look and some game feel, some game experience, and get him up to that speed. But I think with him in there, I think they're ready to unleash Buster Anderson in a way that they didn't. I think one catch for the tight ends against North Carolina, that figures to be a much bigger part of the offense against Georgia, because to be able to take some of the pressure off that running game, you need to start throwing it around a little bit more downfield, get Conashaw comfortable, I think will be the big thing, because he hasn't had that signature road win. You need to get his confidence up. When he's played poorly on the road, he started poorly and then just continued from there. So I think a big thing for Connor is a strong, fast start, and having Bruce and having Rory Anderson out there is key to that happening.
A funny story, this past summer, or it was May, I went to Best Buy in Harbison, and I walked in, and near the cell phone area was Buster Anderson. He was sitting there getting his phone repaired or replaced or something, and so I walked up to him and said, hey, and I said, Buster, how are you always so wide open, He said, I run where they ain't. So, I thought that was funny. He said, I just run to where there's a soft spot and sit down. And last year he was very good at that. So I think they missed that in the first game his talents and finding open areas, and it looks like Connor definitely looks for him. And it would be a definite asset for the Gamecocks if he can play 100% Saturday in Athens.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Ron. He's a really talented player. I think that Buster, if he can come back and be healthy and have a really good year, he's someone that we're going to be talking about maybe going pro after this season.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like, with the way the NFL is utilizing tight ends so much now, 2-3 tight end sets. I mean, we've seen the Patriots do it and all kinds of teams, and Buster's he's one of the best pass catching tight ends in the country, and I think he's set to have a big year. And as far as his hamstring, like Ron said, a lot better now. He was really set back because he had an illness after he got injured too, and he dropped a bunch of weight. It sort of hurt his recovery and hampered him, so they wanted to try to get him to 100%. It looks like he's doing a lot better now.
Hey, I will add this. I will drop this bomb on you, which I haven't talked to any of you guys about. But Anderson going pro early might be a surprise. We were covering the high school sports report. Mm-hmm. I was speaking with A.J. Can's father. He's a strong possibility to leave early, which I hadn't thought about that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's ready. That's a kid that they've been so high on ever since he stepped in on campus, and he's been a stalwart on that line since he got here. So yeah, he's kind of the marquee name of that class for sure. I mean, Brandon Shell can hope to become that, but A.J. Can's the guy with the proven bona fides, which is why I would think that if worst came to worst, they would move Can over to center to just make sure that snap happens, because I can foresee a situation where if it goes poorly and you have some missed snaps, I mean, in a game that's on the road, you're talking about momentum and crowd noise. That's the last thing in the world that they would want to have happen. So, Can's your safety valve because he's so good.
Have you heard any rumblings, Chris, about him leaving early?
I have heard that same thing, and, I think the opinions have been a little bit mixed, and certainly they're going to want to see, talking they, meaning NFL scouts, on how AJ looks this coming season. There's still a lot of football left to be played, but, this is a guy that the SEC coaches certainly feel highly about. He showed up on some all-SEC lists. He's got some improvements to make. He doesn't have great size for the NFL, so he might need another year, but if he feels like, he's got a chance to be a somewhat high draft pick and go make some money for himself, and, this is his fourth year in the program, then maybe that's something he could look at doing.
He's 6'4", 314, so for an interior guy, he's right in that good mix there.
Yeah. One more injury question, and Ron, let you weigh in on this too. Victor Hampton, he took some big shots last week against North Carolina. Bruce Ellington's going to be back. Mm-hmm. Victor stepped in for him on kick return. Looks like Ellington will be back in that role, take that load off of Victor. But does it look like Hampton's going to stay at punt return this week or not? Or are we going to see a Sean Carson or a Pharaoh Cooper, or is it sort of an unknown?
I think it wouldn't surprise me to see Sean Carson or Pharaoh Cooper back there. They love both of those guys. They catch the ball and they move quickly, which is what you want from that punt return thing. I think they would have preferred to see some better judgment on Hampton's part in terms of fair catching versus returning the ball. To have a guy like Victor Hampton that you're going to count on so heavily for your defense and for that leadership and experience and big hitting, to have him laid out twice on returns was not what anybody wanted to see from the defensive coaching standpoint. So it wouldn't shock me at all to see him not out there, or at the very least just doing the punt returns and let Ellington, now that he's back, handle those kickoff returns where he feels comfortable. I don't think Ellington feels very comfortable in that punt return situation, but they have other guys that are waiting in the wings, and gosh, why not use a Sean Carson and get him on the field some experience, and the same thing with Pharaoh Cooper, kind of as your backup, your wild card.
I will say this about Sean Carson, media day. I said, what game are you looking forward to? He said the Georgia game. Wasn't that the game he was injured in? Before was the Georgia game when he hurt his hand. So he said he was really looking forward to that game. I just got a question from Elroy and Monk's Corner listening. Thanks, Elroy. You want to know from my point of view on the sidelines, how does the team look physically compared to previous USC teams? Well, they look like SEC contenders. In years past on the sidelines, when Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, your top guys traditionally, have been warming up, I tend to go to the opposing team and hang around there and size up guys. Like, I really wanted to see how big Tebow was. Mm-hmm. I'm 6'1", 6.5", 6'1", and I wanted to stand next to Tebow and
6.5.
Yeah, I wanted to see, is he really 6'3"? In cleats, with a helmet on, yeah, But anyway, comparing the teams this year, well, the last 2 seasons, almost every single game, except for LSU, USC looked like the bigger team, man for man, position by position during warm-ups. I was at the UNC end zone, where the student section is, and standing next to their D linemen. I mean, they were tall, but they were skinny. And I felt confident that USC would be able to pretty much manhandle those guys. You could see during warm-ups that while they were tall, they just weren't thick, SEC standard thick. I couldn't tell much for the receivers and skill positions, but the linemen is what I try to look at and gauge. And for the last 2 years, USC is either equal to or larger than every team, except maybe Michigan had some big old boys. But as a general rule, they're bigger, and I think that's a direct result of how many wins they're getting. And you win in the trenches. You win with defense, and USC's excelled in both of those areas in the last 2 years.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Elroy. Appreciate that. I couldn't agree more with the LSU comparison, because that was certainly the case when I was down in the field for the last few minutes of that game when they let us down the last 5 minutes, and I was nothing but super impressed with that environment and those players. I mean, when you're watching just from a few yards away, Sam Montgomery and Mingo going off the edges, it's just like, man, that is just a different elite level of athlete. And there's a reason they gave a lot of team fits. I'm still baffled by the bowl game loss, but I'll give credit where credit is due for that. Although I don't forgive them for that loss. They needed to carry their weight there a little bit more. But one of the questions we hear all the time is, how does the team look in warm-ups? And I can tell, honestly, it's hard to tell. For instance, against North Carolina, I made it a point to go down in the field, and it was hot. But I was walking very close to Jadeveon Clowney, and I would not have been able to tell that he was under the weather or had, a flu. He's walking around, they're listening to headphones, they're kind of keeping to themselves. I saw Kelsey Quarles sitting down, and I forget who came over. It might have been Shaq Rowland, kind of talking to him, giving him a little pep talk. And it didn't occur to me that could be anything other than a pep talk. But in hindsight, maybe that was him telling him to keep his head in the game because of the first half suspension. You'll go get him later. So it's really tough to tell. You can only kind of see so much, but you can tell a lot with your eyeballs, putting them on those players and just seeing, stacking up man for man, who's bigger, who looks stronger. And I've never seen a South Carolina team these past 2 years that looks as good or better than everybody else they play.
That's definitely evident from the field advantage. Looking at these questions, we got another one, sideline perspective on the environment at UGA. Now, I will say this. The fans hate Spurrier at UGA, and they definitely are no fans of USC Gamecocks. But that is the best on-field road environment every 2 years. The place is bonkers. I mean, I've got a photograph from a couple years ago at halftime. USC was leading, and they were walking into the tunnel, the visitors' tunnel, and this woman looked like, Sunday school teacher, librarian, double birds, just 10 feet away, flipping him off. They're vocal, they're nasty. It's an exciting atmosphere. Now getting to and from the stadium is probably one of the worst. I've been to every SEC stadium covering this team for the last 10 years, and it's horrible getting in and out of that place. But once you're in there, I guess it's a lot like Bristol Motor Speedway, just getting there. But once you're in there, it's an amazing environment. And on the field, it is loud. It is crazy. I've had it pretty easy on the sidelines as far as conflicts. A funny story here. 2 years ago, I'm in the back of the end zone. Now, one thing most people don't realize is USC, Williams-Brice is the only stadium in the SEC where photographers cannot stand in the end zone and shoot. As a general rule, we like elbow room. You don't want to all be cramped together. One thing is that all our photos look the same. If we're all standing side by side and you throw a bomb, we're all standing next to each other getting the same shot. So ideally, we like to separate for space and room, but it helps us with a variety of images. At USC, it's darn near difficult. I mean, you're from the 30 to the goal line. Next time you watch it on TV or at the game, and USC or the other team is inside the 20, watch how we're packed down in that corner. There is no room to bail out. If they're going for a fade pass in the corner of the end zone, you've got nowhere to go. And that's where cameramen and photographers get wiped out, okay? On the road, we have a little more room, and we don't have the opportunity to get crushed as easy, which makes us more comfortable. But going back to 2 years ago at Georgia, I was standing on the back of the end zone to the right of the goalpost, and I believe USC threw a pass and to the opposite corner of the end zone. And I stepped back to try to get a shot. And when I did that, I ruined a guy's shot down to my right. And he was a Georgia photographer. And he walked up and let it be known that he did not appreciate me doing that. And I didn't realize, I got caught up in the moment. And I knew not to do that. So I apologized. And as he walked away, the state photographer and a couple other guys started kidding me and harassing me for getting yelled at. So, we're all kind of laughing. He looks back from 15 yards away and sees us laughing. Well, he thinks we're laughing at him. So he comes storming back. He's coming back. You need to act professional. Rah, 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 and just raising Cain at me. I said, dude, they're laughing at me. They're not laughing at you. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. I can't go back and undo what I did, but I'll be aware and not move, okay? For the rest of the game, you remember that movie Better Off Dead? Where the kid said, I want my $2, right? Yeah. And everywhere he goes, this kid's on his bike chasing him. I want my $2. That guy was like that to me the whole game. It about ruined the whole game for me. Everywhere I turned, his beady eyes just staring at me, steam coming out his ears. I'm shrugging my shoulders like, what? Come on, give me a break. I screwed up. How many times are you going to vilify me for it? So going there Saturday, I don't remember what he looks like. It's going to be interesting to see this guy, and I will be observant of where he is and do my best not to interrupt anybody's shots. But that is one of those road stories that I'll never forget.
You'll never forget those beady eyes.
Yeah, that dude.
You wake up and flop sweat in your sleep with that little beady-eyed guy staring down. Get out of my shot.
$2. I want my $2.
But that happens. That's the thing. That happens at every game, everywhere in the country, except for maybe I've covered high school sports in Wyoming, and they don't have a lot of crowding for high school football games out there. But at the college level, that happens. People accidentally. You can fall. You can stumble. You can get in people's shots, and it's a fact of life. It's a nature of the beast. So when people react stressfully in situations poorly, that's really more, in my mind, a reflection on their character than it is anything you did wrong. Because you say you're sorry and you move on. There's more shots than just that one in the game. Unless it was the game winner and he had it and he was going to go sell it to whatever red and black traditions they have down there, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah, it's a pain in the butt when it does happen.
We got another question that just came in, and this is actually about a Georgia native, and got a little interesting recruiting backstory on him too. We'll go into, but we got asked Kelsey Griffin, true freshman defensive tackle. How would we rate his performance from last week, and is he going to play again this week? And there were a couple of defensive linemen coming into this season that Deke Adams felt could play as true freshmen, and they were Devin Washington, who's a defensive end, and then Kelsey Griffin at tackle. There's more of a need in terms of just actual need to get a guy like Washington on the field because of what South Carolina is going to lose, and going forward to next season get some of these youngsters some experience. But Washington has had a concussion issue that's kept him sidelined for a while. Whether or not he would played in the first game is hard to tell. But Griffin did get into the rotation, and even though South Carolina has some talent, some depth at the defensive tackle position, they felt he was good enough to play, and he looked really solid. And a lot of people around the program feel that he's got big-time potential. But this is a guy that I think if he does play, he's going to be really motivated to play against UGA because, came out of Mill Creek High School in Georgia, was a guy that came down to Georgia and South Carolina, actually scheduled a ceremony and picked Georgia at that ceremony. He loved South Carolina, but Georgia was a little bit closer to his home. He's a family guy. Picks Georgia. Georgia doesn't take his commitment. And then South Carolina, who was sitting in the number 2 spot, was able to swoop in and grab him. That can't sit well with a guy. So he's one of those guys that's going to be motivated for sure. I think Kelsey played very, very well in his first game. I think he's got a bright future. And just as an overall point, there are 27 scholarship players and then a few walk-ons from the state of Georgia on South Carolina's roster. Not many of them at all were pursued by Georgia out of high school. So you're going to have a lot of guys, I think, with chips on their shoulders in this game. And maybe we're overrating that mental aspect of it. It's more about how you play mentally and not just hating the other team or whatever. It's about what you do mentally on the field in terms of your assignments, executing them physically. But a lot of guys from Georgia, playing in this game for sure, and Kelsey's one of them.
I think that's probably an brought up point, the fact that a lot of those guys weren't recruited by Georgia, because that's a huge tip on their shoulder. That's such an amazing motivation. You think of a Ryan Brewer versus Ohio State. That's not just I got recruited by everybody, including them, and I decided to go here, and I would like to prove something to my home state guys. That's one thing. But getting snubbed by somebody who wanted to recruit you and then having the chance to play them is another level of that motivation. And I think that's an excellent point to bring up, that a lot of those guys didn't.
I mean, look at some of the guys in the past that had success against Georgia, who were from Georgia and played for South Carolina, who Georgia didn't recruit. It's a big state. They produce a ton of talent. Some of it's excusable because they can't take everybody. And Georgia's a big program, so they can recruit some guys nationally, regionally. Keith Marshall and Todd Gurley are both from North Carolina.
That's right.
I mean, of course you're going to take those guys if you can get them. But that said, a program like South Carolina has always recruited Georgia well, has some great players in the past from Georgia. They can pounce on that. Kenny McKinley, Eric Norwood, a lot of those guys. And then, like I said,
Heisman Trophy winner
George Rogers, of course. All those guys definitely have been great for South Carolina. And, with that big of a talent pool, it's great to get in there. But, like I said, 27 guys on their roster with scholarships to South Carolina. And really the only ones that Georgia recruited, they recruited Griffin but didn't take his commitment, which I think was a bad decision. Then you got Mike Davis, who they offered and sort of recruited, didn't really push for. That was the same year that Gurley and Marshall came out. Then you got Chaz Elder, who they didn't really push for. Most of the other guys, didn't even have scholarships from Georgia. So.
And when you look at Kelsey Griffin, he's impressive physically immediately.
Yeah.
During the brief period of practices that we did get to go watch, he was holding his own in one-on-ones with Kelsey Quarles and Phillip Dukes and JT Surratt. They had these drills they would do where they would lock up 2-on-1, and he was in a 2-on-1 with Kelsey and JT Surratt and maintaining his leverage in his position. I thought, dang. I mean, I didn't know. It was when we first got there, and I'm like, who is that? Is that somebody I haven't seen before? Is that did somebody change numbers that was here a while? And I was like, that's actually Kelsey Griffin. And man, he looks good. And then when you talk to Kelsey Quarles and JT Surratt and some of these other defensive linemen, Chaz Sutton included, when you ask them who's looking good out of the new crop, and it's Kelsey Griffin is the first name that they mention, and they're all impressed. I think he's going to come in with a chance to really cement a position there in the wake of Quarles, who will probably go pro. If all things go well for him, kind of a best case scenario for his situation, and I think he can't be anything but delighted with his signing and what he projects to do here at USC in the future for the defensive tackle position, both in depth and talent.
Let's talk a little bit more. Let's dive into the Georgia game a little bit more. I mean, it's a huge game, obviously, for both teams. Georgia not only trying to get a leg up in the East, but prevent themselves from going 0-2. Prevent a disaster,
yeah.
Exactly. And so, South Carolina, of course, trying to get a leg up in the East, although history proves not necessarily going to win the division. You can't stumble. But, talk about Georgia. We both were able to watch Clemson, Georgia. The Dogs have a lot of youth on defense. They got a lot of talent, too, following recruiting. I know some of these guys they have, they're really good players, but a lot of them are freshmen, redshirt freshmen. They had some injuries. What were your thoughts on Georgia's performance against Clemson, and then sort of how that will relate, to the South Carolina game coming up? Defensively,
a lot of youth. When you talk about, I think, eight starters they lost on defense. That's a lot. Some of that, a couple guys of the suspension variety, but that's a significant amount of people to replace on a defense. And I was talking, had the opportunity today to talk with Eric Zier, the former Georgia quarterback, who's now their color analyst for the broadcast, and I was kind of gauging his take on how he felt about the defense. What do the Georgia fans feel about how the defense performed? Because obviously they gave up a ton of yards, 400, I think, and 70 maybe in total offense from Clemson, and he He said, I like the youth. The young guys they saw out there that they had plugged into those positions didn't always get in the right places and do the right things, but he liked a lot their athleticism and their speed and their desire. Kind of the same things that you hear from the South Carolina camp about the young linebackers. And so I think they feel like they have good talent and good quality there, but getting those guys up to SEC game speed, and plus, again, it's important to remember they are on the road in a hostile environment for the first time. Those 8 guys that were out there, and so it's to be expected for them to have had a few moments here and there. But they do like them. They feel confident down the road. Now, how quickly that'll translate into an SEC win when you're facing a team of South Carolina's caliber that has a lot of weapons and is very dangerous on offense, especially running the ball. And then now they'll have a deep threat, no matter whether it's Demir Bird. I mean, who expected Demir Bird to go in last year and just manhandle Bakari Rambo for that huge catch early in the game that just set the tone? I did not. I went back and watched that play, and I still can't believe that was Demir Bird that did that. But somebody comes up and makes the play. Who, when that ball went up and Shaq Rowland was open, I think there were a couple of gulps that were in the stands in the press box, and then he made the play, and it was beautiful. When Dylan Thompson goes in and launches a deep pass, and I think a lot of people are like, wait, who's 85 is who? It's Kane Whitehurst. And so I think whoever it has needed to be, it has been, and I think that'll continue because Steve Spurrier just has that way about him. He'll find a guy to get the ball in the hands to make those plays from a receiving standpoint, and with Ellington back playing more, that has a good chance to happen, especially with Rowland. So South Carolina is dangerous offensively, and Georgia understands that, and they don't buy into the fact that Connor Shaw is likely to underperform. At least Eric Zier said they give Connor Shaw a lot of credit. They like what they see from him, and I think if you look at the times that he has struggled, it's been in cases where it's on the road at Florida and LSU when you, me, and our uncle would struggle in that situation against very good defenses.
Yeah, I mean, in Georgia, the thing that stood out to me watching the Clemson game back was a lot of athleticism, like I said, a lot of talent, but the biggest issue is in missing tackles, and that's typical of a young defense. We're going to see it from South Carolina's linebackers this year. Young guys, they struggle sometimes against the run, and then they struggle with getting out of position, in the passing game and making their run fits and reading their keys, things like that. And I think that's what Georgia struggled with, both up front and then in the secondary. Damian Swan, who's actually one of their more experienced players, he's a junior, tried to shoulder tackle Sammy Watkins in the open field, and next thing you know is 77 yards for a touchdown. So that's definitely something to watch, as far as whether or not Georgia can tackle. South Carolina's ran for 200 yards the past 2 seasons. Marcus Lattimore in the past 3 seasons went over 100 yards each game, sometimes in the high 100s. And then they've got 2 capable backs this year. They got Mike Davis, they got Brandon Wilds, and an offensive line that's going to be, I think, better than last year. So can they get in position, and then can they tackle? And if Georgia can't tackle, I think it's going to be pretty tough for them.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that favors South Carolina to a large degree. And I don't expect anything other than to see South Carolina have success on the running game perspective and being able to throw the ball. Whether it'll be a light at the scoreboard kind of a situation or not, I doubt. But I think they should be able to score enough points to overcome whatever Georgia can put together against South Carolina's defense, which I don't think will be more than 17 points.
All right, we're going to take a little break here from Ron and Chris, who've done an outstanding job. I hope everyone's enjoyed this broadcast. This is our first ever broadcast. We are literally winging it. And it's been a blast, and it's gone by faster than I thought it would. I want to take a moment, though, to thank the owners and proprietors of the Back Porch, 1616 Gervais Street here in downtown Columbia. I want to introduce Ron Bowers. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And let Ron describe where we're sitting and give a little hype to the place that's our gracious host.
Well, we're sitting here looking over at the bar, which is picking up tonight. We're big Gamecock fans, and we appreciate y'all wanting to come here and do the radio show with us. We're open every day at 4:30. For happy hour till 7:30, a long 3-hour happy hour. We're big Gamecock fans, so we go to the games ourselves, but if it's an early game, we open up afterward, and we hope everybody goes to the games too. And during away games, we try to do it big up here. Last week we had a great day, even though we didn't have a game. But we're looking forward to the Georgia game this week, and hope the Gamecocks can pull it out.
Well, one thing I do like about this place, it's quaint. It's got as much outdoor seating as indoor. It's a relaxed environment. It's not real big. It's a cozy place. Seems like a place I'd hang out on my own here, along with the rest of the staff. We appreciate you guys letting us do our broadcast here, and look forward to doing more this season. You guys serve food, right?
Absolutely. We have a full menu. We do a lot of house-made pulled pork. We do that on quesadillas, sliders, just pulled pork itself. We do a lot of chicken and fish as well. A lot of good bar food to have while you're having a drink.
Now, wait a minute. You don't name any of your entrees after USC players, do you?
We haven't yet, but we're trying to figure out the right way to go about trying to do that.
We don't necessarily want to get any of them in trouble, although you're more than welcome to name one after the Gamecock Central staff members, or we've got one guy on our staff. I'm not going to name him, but it rhymes with Rot Bud, who loves to eat. And they may be like some super nacho with like everything thrown on it. You could call it the Rot Bud special.
Absolutely.
And his name can be used later on. But we really appreciate you taking time to give us a little corner of your establishment. We suggest any Gamecock fan, any listeners out there, to come down and check them out. I think you enjoy it. And you're open 7 days, right?
We're open Monday through Saturday.
Monday through Saturday. During the week, we're open for lunch from 11 till 2. And then we reopen again at 4:30 until whenever.
Yep.
So you can grab a big old crew of friends or just yourself. Come on down, take a sample of their beverages here at this nice, cozy bar. They'll treat you right. Sit outside if the weather's nice, and check it out. It's worth coming to visit for sure. We'll appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll see you, get to wrap with you next week.
Absolutely.
We'll wrap up the rest of the show. We got about 20 minutes left. We can get our crew back together here and answer a couple more questions. We got a question from Elroy again. Elroy's popular. Elroy said, Chris Clark, in your estimation, who will USC's next commitment be?
Well, for the 2014 class, not many spots left. South Carolina is recruiting really Donnell Stanley on the O-line. They've got Darrell Scott out there at running back. Maybe another defensive lineman or two. Really, that'll pretty much close out the class. I think Donnell Stanley could very well make a decision in the next coming weeks, but he doesn't have anything scheduled. Darrell Scott has a decision scheduled on October 25th, so he could very well be the next one. It's hard to tell beyond that if any 2015 guys will fall before that, who happen to visit. But Scott is a guy that South Carolina leads for, 4-star running back out of North Carolina. And he would, I think, certainly be one to watch, although that's still a little ways off. The weekend of the Missouri game is when he's slated to make his decision.
We've got another question here. Maybe Ron can pipe in on this one. What do you think the formula for USC will be to come out of Athens with a victory? How much Mike Davis, how much Brandon Wilds, how much throwing? Will we see Dylan Thompson and Bruce Ellington make a name for himself on the road here?
I think the formula for that is very similar to the one they used last year, where you get off to an early lead and then just let your defense play from ahead and just feast. I really think they'll have the opportunity to do something. I think part of that mix will be a Dylan Thompson situation. They'll create some scenario. Who knows? He may go out wide. They may do something funky where he comes in and then Connor Shaw goes out wide. I know they've run a couple of plays like that. He'll figure something out. Steve Spurrier will to kind of create some confusion and on offense, as well as being able to plug that running game in and then hit him with a deep pass. I mean, we've seen Spurrier throw deep in the first halves of almost every game that we've seen him play. He loves to do that. He loves to get a lead with the passing game and then sit on it with running and defense. And I think that's a good formula for beating college football teams. I think it worked last year terrifically with the addition of some special teams outstanding performances, and I think that'll work again against Georgia. So for this, I think you use those tight ends. You give a nice rotation. Everett Sands said today that he likes the split down the middle between Brandon Wilds and Mike Davis. They have no plans to do anything other than what they've done so far. I think he liked the fact that they both got 12 carries. He said he didn't realize that until after the game. And then when I mentioned that Connor Shaw also had 12 carries, he didn't know that until I told him. So I thought that was kind of neat. But between those three guys, that's a good running game. And rely on those people. Throw to a healthy Buster Anderson and a more healthy Jarrell Adams. That's one of the things that last week he was a little gimpy. So, you had your 1 and 2 guys going into the season. One's out, the other one's gimpy. That's a good reason not to try to test Drew Owens and Kelvin Rainey too much. But I think they factor in, and they're able to get ahead maybe 14, 17, nothing, if not maybe 7 points in there for Georgia. And you just let your defense sit back and feast, because I saw nothing from that Georgia offensive line that led me to believe they could stop South Carolina's defensive front. Nothing.
I was going to say two things about that. One, I think we'll all agree when USC scored 17 points, that was it for the offense. We vanilla the rest of the way.
Right.
There was no way North Carolina was going to score 17 points, period. I didn't feel that way from the field perspective. Mm-hmm. They just didn't have the push. And I think anytime USC wanted to exploit the long ball, they could, but chose not to. Spurrier likes to save all his goodies for Georgia, the team he loves so much.
That's right.
But I will say this too, and watching the Clemson-Georgia game, I was surprised how porous the offensive line for Georgia was. And I thought to myself, by mid-fourth quarter, I said, man, if they play like this next week, USC is going to eat them up. I really think so, because of the depth. And not just Clowney, but, I mean, they're too deep on the D-line. And their offensive line showed a lot of weakness, I thought. And I don't know if you fixed that in 1 week.
They were panicking. I mean, that was a panic mode, Georgia offensive line. They're rotating guys around at the tackle positions that you would think would be locked down. I mean, they were doing anything they could. That was an absolute meltdown. Stop, move whatever you can move around to prevent this from happening, because they were getting so disrupted from a front four of Clemson that none of us would have ranked in the nation's elite. And for 5 sacks to have been given up, for the Clemson's defensive front line to have disrupted Georgia's offensive plans so much, I mean, gosh, that was my first thought was, Lord, if Clemson's guys can do this, what can Chaz Sutton and Jadeveon Clowney do? They've already had experienced a lot of success against these same individuals, and now they can go in there, and I don't see any reason for them not to do the same thing. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think one thing we can't underestimate, it is a factor. Georgia's offensive line playing up in Clemson, a lot of crowd noise. Mm-hmm. And even Mark Richt and some of the staff there said, Aaron Murray, their offensive line coach, Will Friend, said, hey, they had some trouble because then you can't adjust your cadence. Basically your O-line and your D-line are getting off the ball at the exact same time. So that makes it tough. But that said, Georgia, Canarius Gates, their left tackle who Clowney whipped last year, the other left tackle they put in, Colton Houston, they both had a lot of trouble, blocking Clemson's edge rushers. And then they had a couple penalties on the inside with their center, David Andrews. They had, some of Clemson's quick guys inside gave them some trouble. So, yeah, I mean, the penalties, the crowd noise, those things hurt. But they just flat out got beat some. And so, unless they really, really play a lot better next week, it's going to be tough for them. And I think the run game for Georgia is going to be the absolute key, because if they get into 3rd and long and let South Carolina tee off, then it could be a longer day for them, I think.
And South Carolina was successful at doing that last year, preventing those two guys from getting off. I think they combined for maybe 26 carries for 76 yards or something to that effect. And these are the same individuals coming back, trying to do the same thing again, facing the same group of dudes on the South Carolina side. And South Carolina understands clearly, especially with the loss of the Georgia wide receiver, is it Mitchell?
Malcolm Mitchell.
Yeah, Malcolm Mitchell, who was the big deep threat. That you stop those two guys in the middle, Keith Marshall and Todd Gurley, and you're going to get your sacks, you're going to get your 3rd and longs, and you're going to get those guys off the field.
We've got a Twitter question for Ron. Mm-hmm. Do you like Dabo Swinney?
I think Dabo is a fine cheerleader for his university. I think he would be effective in either the coaching little get-up that he wears, his coaching costume, or a cheerleading costume. I don't think he has much to do with the actual day-to-day running of a football team. I think grown men make those decisions. Chad Morris and Brett Venables, they get paid amazingly high amount to do so in comparison to what their head coach makes. One of the things I always think about when people try to convince me that Dabo Swinney's a great football coach, when they point to his wins and they point to this or that, how many times does he get approached or does his name come up in job searches for other schools looking for a head coach? And the answer is never. His name, we were laughing about this before practice today. He must have the worst agent in the world, because at least I would say, dude, get my name out there for like Toledo or for somebody else to, at least make it look like other people want me to be their head coach. But he's a positive, upbeat, energetic guy, and that's worked for them. They have a formula where, sometimes the smartest guy doesn't always have to be the one in charge. The other guys around him, if they're doing their jobs, the whole team can work together. And I think that's kind of what it is there. And he does what they need him to do. And they're winning with him, so why bother? That's just my one man's opinion of Dabo Swinney.
Okay, we're down to the last 10 minutes here, and we've had a couple listeners want Chris and Ron to break down the position groups and give the advantage to either USC or UGA for each position group here as we wrap up at the Back Porch for Gamecock Central Radio.
All right. I'll run through mine quickly and
then
Ron run through his. Quarterback, pretty even actually. Aaron Murray is the home quarterback. Connor Shaw's the road quarterback. He's still searching, as we said, for that sort of signature win. But Aaron Murray, is a guy who, quite honestly, it's not just a reputation. It's fact at the moment that he hasn't had a great game and led his team to win. He's got the one win against the top 10 opponent in his career, and it was against Florida last year, and he threw 3 interceptions. So they sort of won despite it, his performance there. So, that's pretty even, I think. Running back, as good as Wilds and Davis are, I think Todd Gurley's the best running back in the country. I'm still going to give Gurley and Marshall the edge there, especially with them being at home. The fact that Gurley is a grown man. Tight end, really good duo with Arthur Lynch, Jay Rome for Georgia. I think I might still give the edge to Anderson and Adams there, assuming they're both completely healthy. Offensive line, Georgia looked pretty porous last week. South Carolina, they've got some experience back. We don't know as much about them because I think they're going to be better than last year, but that's probably fairly even at this point in my mind. Wide receiver, with Malcolm Mitchell out, I'm going to give that to South Carolina, even though, Georgia had some receivers step up. Justin Scott Wesley stepped up. They got Michael Bennett, who's reliable, Rantavius Wooten. Those guys can all play some ball. The kicking game is another one that I think is pretty even because Elliott Fry, he had a really good game against North Carolina. He looked like he wasn't rattled at all, but he's still inexperienced. He hasn't done it on the road yet. And then Marshall Morgan is suspended again for Georgia, so they will have their walk-on. Patrick Belis will be kicking again. Defensively, I think South Carolina's got the advantage on the defensive line and in the secondary because they're more experienced. Linebackers, both teams are young. I think Georgia is probably a little more talented there overall, and they have a lot of versatile guys that do different things. But that's pretty close, too, I would say.
Yeah, I think I'd have a very similar grading system there as you do. Quarterback edge, Georgia. Running backs edge, Georgia. Tight ends edge, South Carolina. Offensive line edge, South Carolina. Defensive line certainly edge, South Carolina. Linebackers, I would pick South Carolina only because there are more guys behind them, just from a depth perspective, and the way that Kirk Botton has used those guys to rotate them, a lot of dudes in and out, and take advantage of some of that athleticism. I think that bodes well, and they're going to continue to do that. Plus, you get Cedric Cooper back, who they're going to work in slowly and try to get him back up to speed. But he is a big get back for that linebacking crew. Cornerbacks edge, South Carolina. Safeties edge, South Carolina. Kicking game, a good that could be an adventure. It could absolutely be an adventure, mostly because Elliott hasn't done it on the road. But good Lord, with Marshall Morgan out for his boating foolishness over the summer, I mean, that is a nightmare scenario for Georgia with those guys. And so I would tentatively edge South Carolina just from what we saw with Elliott Fry. He seems like a calm, cool, collected guy when he talked to the media the other night. I was impressed with him. He said he hit a 50-yarder in an all-star game, contrary to the media guy that said he hit a 44-yarder as his longest. And so he feels confident, and I like that out of a kicker a lot.
Well, we're down to the last minute of this hour-long show, so we're going to end it with our prediction. I'll go first. This game traditionally is tight. I think it will be a 31-24 ball game USC.
I'm going to go 35-31 South Carolina right now.
Thinking 31-13 South Carolina.
Well, we're big on that 30.
Yeah, 30, that's good. Not too much more than that, because they won't try to do too much once they hit that 30-point plateau. He won't be throwing for the end zone and trying to put up 50 like he did on Georgia and Sanford Stadium at Florida.
Any last comments here? Last 30 seconds?
One last little note that I thought was neat. This will be the 8th time that these two teams have played when they're ranked, when both teams were ranked. In those 7 games previously, South Carolina leads 5-2.
I like that trend.
Yeah, so I look for that to continue.
One thing I wanted to get y'all's opinion on before we go real quick. How can Georgia win? I mean, we all picked South Carolina, so I guess Georgia in our mind would be an upset. What has to happen for Georgia to win?
There's problems on offense getting the rhythm established. There's a turnover. Maybe there's a bad snap. Maybe there's a fumble that's uncharacteristic from Connor Shaw or an interception that's returned for a touchdown. You get a special teams, maybe a run back or something that helps Georgia out, maybe gives them 14 points. The offense struggles on South Carolina standpoint to kind of get any rhythm, can't sustain drives, and gives the ball back to Aaron Murray, and he's able to find a couple of guys deep, get his passing game in a groove, and Todd Gurley rushes for 2 long touchdowns. And that's an easy recipe for Georgia to get 35 points, and I don't know if South Carolina's offense can count on 35 points on the road, really anywhere, especially in Athens.
Yeah, I think if South Carolina doesn't take care of the ball, like you said, Ron, if they don't take care of the ball, if they can't run the ball and get in a bunch of 3rd and longs, and if they can't stop Todd Gurley and let Aaron Murray open up the play-action game and all that, it's going to be very tough for them to win. If they can stop the run, if they can run the ball on offense, I think it'll very much increase their chances.
I think it's going to come down to turnovers. Specifically, USC on offense, if they don't have a starting center as expected, and for some reason Georgia miraculously turns into the fearsome foursome and puts incredible pressure on Connor, and the potential for the freshman linebackers to get worn down, making so many tackles on those 2 big backs from Georgia. If that happens, we could see an upset.
It's going to be hot and muggy again. That definitely could be a factor, conditioning again. And Connor Shaw has one of the things I thought was I didn't want to see come back when he played against North Carolina was the tendency to kind of bail on a play too soon. That's sort of been his MO over time. When he gets a little bit nervous, he doesn't see what he likes, he'll take off and start running because that's a strength and he can do it. And a lot of times that turns into a 5, 6, 7, 13, 18-yard gain. Other times it turns into a 1 or 2 yard gain, and then now you're looking at a 3rd and long, and pass goes incomplete, and you're turning the ball back over again. I know Spurrier would like him to stay in the pocket longer than he does, and that's one of the things that Spurrier loves about Dylan Thompson is Thompson will stay in that pocket until the cows come home. He will not leave it, and so that's why he was back to that throw to Whitehurst. He stayed in that pocket probably longer than Connor Shaw might have, and delivered a perfect strike. So I think there's a plan to bring Dylan in for that reason. But I think overall, you're just looking at South Carolina as a better team. There's a reason they trounced them. They routed them last year. I think Georgia's a team that's with their backs against the wall, and behind the wall is a cliff. And if they go off and potentially could lose to LSU, in a couple weeks, that's a disaster. And when you have disaster at your back, you tend to play a little tighter than you do when you have nothing to lose, and there's a lot to lose in Georgia. So if South Carolina can get up early and look like they can hold them, I think that plays into their favor because Georgia's kind of waiting for a meltdown. I mean, they're reeling. They're on the ropes right now after that Clemson game. That's not what they wanted to have happen, but it did, and South Carolina's primed to take advantage of it, and I like their chances. I like the fact that they're just, I believe, a better football team than Georgia is right now.
One thing's for sure, if I'm ever given 30 seconds to live by a doctor, I hope you're that doctor, because I live a little longer. One thing's for certain, we'll be back next week and have another broadcast. Until then, please come up with ideas or suggestions to make the show better. We're doing it for you. We're not doing it for us. So submit it via email, and we look forward to seeing you guys and talking to you guys next week.
Thanks a lot to the Back Porch for having us.
Yes, indeed.